Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Compassion. Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Jason with Compassion Church. I'm so excited you joined this morning. I hope you're having an awesome start to your day. Hope God's blessing you. I hope He's speaking to you. I hope the good things are going on in life. If they're not, I'm praying for you. I believe things are going to turn around. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. We're talking about the new series, The Comeback at Compassion Church. And it's about how our story intertwines with God's story. It's also about that your story is not over yet. If, maybe you're in need of a comeback. Maybe you're in need of a change. If you've got breath in your body, your story is not over and God's got plans. Last time we talked about the woman from Shunem. It was found in 2 Kings chapter 4. And we saw in this story that this woman, after taking care of Elisha for years, the prophet, who represents the presence of God, she was blessed with a child. And she had put herself in a place to receive blessing. So many times we expect to receive God's blessing, but we're not in a place to receive it. It's not that God's withholding from us. It's not that He's even punishing us. It's just we're over here fiddling around where we don't need to be when God wants us over here. And the thing is, that's how you receive the blessing. You've got to be in a place to receive it. You've got to be where you can hear Him and receive that. Secondly, we saw that she lost this child as he grew older, that he ended up dying. And so what did she do? She remembered who her source was. She remembered who the source of the blessing was, the provider. And so she sent to the prophet Elisha, again, who represents that presence of God, and told him what happened. And she had a comeback. God resurrected the child, bringing life back into his body. We're going to continue with that same woman, 2 Kings chapter 8 this time. And in this story, as she's going about, again, she hears from the man of God. Gehazi sends a message, who was the servant of Elisha, the prophet, and says, there's a famine coming. And this famine is going to wipe out all the food in Israel. It's going to be devastating. You need to leave. You need to leave and go where you can have food. So she leaves. She moves away. She's gone for 7 years. For 7 years, God takes care of her. For 7 years, God watches over her while famine rages in Shunem. A famine has come about. And after 7 years, she comes back home. But when she comes back home, she finds out her property's been sold. Her property's been given away because they assumed that she was gone, I guess, or dead. So her property has been given to someone else. So she goes to entreat the king to give her property back. While she's on the way there, it just so happens Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, is before the king himself. And he's telling the king, I want to tell you this story. I want to tell you the story of a woman who had a child that she loved, that God had given to her, and tells them the story of this child and how he died. And this man of God, the prophet, went, and he's telling him all kinds of stories of prophet Elisha, and tells him of the story where he raised the woman from Shunem's very own son. And as Gehazi's telling the king the story, the woman walks into the inner court. She's there. And Gehazi turns and says, this is the very woman that I'm speaking of. It was her child who died. It was her. She's the woman that went through this. And of course, she shares her story with the king. And in doing so, she shares the famine story as well. And he orders that her land be returned back to her, that everything she once owned be given back to her. Again, she has a comeback. What can we learn from her story today? Well, first of all, by following the voice of God. Remember, she served Elisha, who is the representative as a prophet in the Old Testament of the presence of God. And as she served Elisha, she listened to his teaching. She learned from watching him. She learned about what God was saying. And in doing so, she trained herself to hear from God. And so when the famine time came, she was already in the mode of hearing God. And so she was able to hear about the famine and leave before it would inflict harm upon her family. We need to remember, we've got to be in position to hear God. We think, I hope God tells me when this terrible thing comes my way. I hope God protects me from this, that, or the other. But we have to be in the mode to hear God. We can't just think, oh, well, when something awful comes, I'm just hoping God shows up, but have no relationship with him. We can't just hope if something awful comes our way that we'll just happen to hear about it because God just loves us so much, which he does, and expect to